Okay, so we wanted to do a video on replacing mobile phone screens for a while. I've been replacing them for around about 7 years. I've just never ever got around to posting a video. So today we're going to look at the iPhone XR. Now the one that we've got here, there's been a bleed on the LCD and the touch is unresponsive. So we've got our new screen. And the first thing we need to do is just at the bottom of pretty much all iPhones, you will see two pentalobe screws, and we are going to remove those with the pentalobe driver. So just something to note then, if you've actually repaired an iPhone 4 up to an iPhone 8 Plus, you will notice the pentalobe screws are quite short. However, on the iPhone X upwards, you'll find they're actually quite long in comparison. So when you take them out, obviously just be careful. Yeah, so what we're going to do now is remove the screen. Now, when you're removing the screen, you'll see on a lot of tutorials that they're going to heat the surface up. They're going to, because of the glue around it, you can do that. That's not an issue. However, the screen's already broken. I am not going to break this phone anymore. So I'm actually just going to use a thin tool just to pry down the side of it and pull the screen out. Okay, so we've got a thin piece of metal, in this case it's a blade. Once we've actually created a small gap, which we have there, then we're going to use our little pick and we're going to work our way down to around about where the line is on the phone, actually, across the bottom again, back across the bottom and up the other side. We're not going to actually go any deeper into the phone than kind of this line here, and you will find that down the right hand side of the phone you do have ribbon cables, so you don't want to be cutting into those. If you're replacing an original screen, it will be glued down, and more so at the top. The reason that I use a blade is that when it comes to the top, you will tend to find that it's still glued in, and you need to pull that down a bit to actually release the whole screen. But once you've used your blade, if you just come across the top as you're pulling down, that will cut the glue and the screen will just come away a lot easier. Okay, we've worked our way around the phone. I'll have a look in the phone in a second. What I did just want to pick up on is when you buy a mobile phone screen, you will generally get a small bag of tools with that. Now these, they're not the best. My bottom drawer is full of these. Pretty much every screen that I buy, I'll get a set of tools with. That's my set that I use to repair all mobile phones, and that's pretty much all I'll ever need, apart from pry tools. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I need to take a phone apart. Quite impressed this time on the screen that I bought. Came with a half decent set of tools, actually. So yeah, quite impressed with that. Anyway, back to the phone. So when I opened this up, first thing I noticed, and I've noticed this quite a lot over the years, there are some cowboys out there, and sure enough, when I started to release down the side of the screen, I could tell it wasn't glued. Therefore I knew that this phone had been repaired in the past with a new screen. And of course, when I opened that up, there's no heat shields. So whoever repaired this last time hasn't replaced any heat shields, and just looking now, they've not been replacing screws. Yeah, just really important that you do replace heat shields. One of the purposes of the heat shields is to keep these little clips in, so that the phone works properly. Because if you knock your phone, if one of these ribbon cables pops out, then you need to send it to get repaired. You know, maybe this is why they're leaving them out, so that people will go back to them. I don't know. But just absolute cowboys, and you really do, if you want to do this and make sure your phone's right, just make sure that everything goes back as it should. Okay, so normally what we would find here is we would find a heat shield. It would be over the top of that ribbon cable there, and there would be one screw at the top here, one at the bottom, sorry, at the bottom left, one at the bottom right, and one at the top. There's a connection missing here as well, I've noticed. So again, a bit of another cowboy job. Once you release this screw here, don't try and release this screw at the top. The heat shield will slide out from the metal connector from underneath it. Okay, so just carefully slide it out. Be careful of your ribbon cable, and that will just slide out. You'll be able to slide that back in once you replace the screen. So coming back down the phone, underneath, well, first of all, you will find a heat shield just over the top of these two ribbon cables. So it's one screw on the left hand side, one screw on the right hand side, and remove those. And then underneath these ribbon cables, you will find another heat shield, which is going to protect some of the cables running down the side and across the bottom, and that's connected by 3 screws, so one at the top, one at the bottom, and one on the right hand side. Just be careful of these ribbon cables above when you're unscrewing those. First thing, and always the first thing I have to say, when you're repairing phones and putting in new screens, before you disconnect anything, any ribbon cable on this phone, disconnect your battery, because otherwise you could cause a short circuit, and always use a plastic tool. Okay, so with the battery off, we are going to disconnect some of the ribbon cables. So the one at the top is for your speaker and light sensor, and then the ones in the middle of the board are for your screen and your LCD and your touchscreen digitizer. Okay, so really I have to say, having bought many screens before, and yes, some of them have been faulty, test your new screen. That is the first thing to do. So once again, make sure that your battery is disconnected, and then grab your new screen, and then just plug your digitizer and screen into the 2 sockets on the board. Don't worry about your speaker, etc. We can do that once we know the screen's working. Okay, so we've plugged our 2 ribbon cables in. As I say, one is for the screen and the other for one for the LCD, one for the digitizer, the touchscreen. Then we've reconnected our battery, and the reason for this is we just want to check that everything's working. Now, when I got this phone, the problem was that apart from the screen being cracked, as you can see, there was a bleed on the screen, which wouldn't always stop the touchscreen from working, but the touchscreen was not working on this one. So we'll just check that, and we can see that the touchscreen is working. So yeah, so happy that the touchscreen is working. So what we're going to do is going to remove the screen, and then remove the speaker assembly from the old screen, place it onto the new screen. Normally we would replace the heat shields. I will talk you through that but unfortunately the cowboy that did it last time wasn't us, but they just haven't replaced some of the parts, so just bear with us and we will start to swap the parts over. Okay, so we've got our new screen just here, and we've got our old screen on the right hand side. What we need to do is we need to remove the speaker assembly from the top. All I would say is before you discard anything at the screen, just make sure that you've got all the bits that you need. You will tend to find with the XR screen that you don't get the plastic camera slots, so they will need changing over as well. On some of the screens you don't actually get the back plate either, so always worth just keeping all of these back plates just for quickness, and it is just a case of taking out something like 8 screws around the side. You can see the small lugs. Sorry, camera's going out of focus. There's one that hasn't been replaced, and on each corner and around the side. And you're needing the Y screwdriver, the Y type screwdriver to undo those. And I think that's, yeah, so that's the Y type screwdriver that you would take these screws out with. You can see on the old screen they've not been put back together. However, we've got that on our new screen. It's already there, so the only thing we need to do is remove the protective film from the screen, and then we're good just to switch over the speaker and the light sensor from the old screen. So what we need to do that, and again we need to be careful with the ribbon cables, what we need to do that is we just need to remove this screw, squeaky screwdriver. So there are 3 screws on the actual speaker that you need to remove. Now I tend to find it helps when I remove screws if I set them out the way that they go back. Just quickly to say, there is one more screw in this, and that's at the top there, and that is the Y type screw. It's not the Phillips. So again, I'm just setting my screws out so I know which order they go back in. Once you've done that, if we flip the speaker down, again I tend to find using a plastic tool for this, because if you do catch a ribbon cable, you're not going to damage it as much. And then all we're going to do is we are going to pry away it's come away very easy there, I do have to say, but that's because it's been done before, so it most likely will. Okay, so yeah, the cowboys have been at this phone. Just above, so when we unfold the speaker, you'll see at the top just here, this is your light sensor bar. Normally over the top of the light sensor bar is a small metal bracket, and all it does is it slides onto this piece of metal on the screen. So when we come to reassembling, I will show you where that goes. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out the plastic seating, if you will, for the cameras. So I'm going to get that done and I'll be back. Okay, so we have removed the plastic seating for the cameras, and we've moved that across to our old screen. I have to say that there's no real reason to glue this down, as I can see. It pretty much holds itself in place once the 3 screws are put back in, so I see no reason trying to glue it down. If you use glue, you're more than likely going to distort one of your cameras, so unless you're using some precision tool, I really would not bother. Okay, so what we're going to do then is we are going to start to seat everything back in. And the first thing is our light sensor bar and other small bits across the top. Sometimes it is easier just to actually just to put everything into the plastic and then seat it onto the phone. I'm going to do that and I will be back in a second. Oh, just to say, when we remove the plastic part, again, used a blade just to pry it up. Okay, so once we've got everything seated as we would like, the first thing to do is to take the small metal bracket, which we don't have because because of the cowboys that repaired the phone previously. We would slip that over the light sensor bar and it would just hold that in place. The reason for its existence, I can't tell you, because there is another piece of metal that kind of holds that in place. So once we're replacing everything, the first thing that needs to happen is this small Y-type screw in the top corner, which is going to hold the light sensor in place. We'll go in and that should sit in nicely. And then the next thing is that we are going to use our Phillips screwdriver to put in the other 3 screws. Personal thing, I don't tighten the screws fully up when I'm replacing one particular part. That's only because if you do, you can see that there is a slight bit of movement. You can't see because it's kind of blurred because the screwdriver's in there. There is a slight bit of movement in that part. So once you've got all the your screws seated in place, then it's time to tighten up, and everything should be in its correct place. Okay, so just to show you then, on the top, don't know if you can see the small, I don't know if I can get that, so just in the center here, the small piece of metal, there is normally a bracket on there that holds the light sensor bar, but there is a piece of metal behind it. So again, I don't know the reason for it being there. Okay, so once we've done that, then we need to replace the screen onto the phone, and again we're just going to follow the steps that we did before. First of all, we'll be plugging our speaker light sensor bar into the top plug there, and then our LCD and digitized touchscreen into these 2 here before reconnecting the battery. So I'm just going to go and do that. Oh no, actually I'm not. I've just noticed something extraordinarily important. I find I get a load of phones off builders, so one of the things that I am going to do is, before I replace the screen onto the phone, I'm going to give it a quick clean out so that dust doesn't get into any parts. And if you have removed a genuine screen, one that hasn't been replaced before, you will find down the sides here and along the top glue. You can see at the bottom here that it's not been removed last time. So we're going to remove that. I never replace the glue. Just gives people a false sense of security that the phone may be water resistant to some point. So I never replace the glue, and I always tell my customers that they are not waterproof and shouldn't go for a swim. So yeah, I'm just going to give this phone a quick clean inside, as it desperately needs it. I have just noticed as well, just down the side here, that there's been some previous water damage. So I can tell that from this indicator here, and again, it may be from last time the screen was broken, but okay, so I'm going to give it a clean up and I will come back. Okay, so we've replaced all our connectors now. So the top connector just here, which connects our light sensor bar and earpiece speaker. Now normally at this point we would replace it's kind of like a square heat shield, and unfortunately the people that have repaired this before, because this is the second repair that this screen has had, certainly wasn't us that did it before, however they've omitted to replace all the heat shields, either through laziness, they've lost them whilst doing the job, or lost screws, or they just hoping that one of these clips will come out when they give the phone back, and then they get the phone back to repair and they charge for that. Unfortunately, that's what some people do, but what I would say is just make sure that you replace everything as it comes out. So normally at this point we put the square heat shield back over here. It holds all these clips in. The heat shield goes over the top of the ribbon cable, so you do need to be very careful when replacing this one, that you don't damage this ribbon cable. Again, you can see that if I just sit this back up, that there is a screw just at the top there. There's one at the bottom left hand corner, one at the bottom right hand corner, and when you actually replace this, this screw hole here normally has a small metal clip on. Again, I'd love to tell you the purpose of that. I don't know what the purpose is. All I know is it should be there, and it bridges these two screw holes here. So you slide the heat shield underneath this small metal piece that would normally be here, and then you replace the 4 screws. Once you've done that, the next thing to do, you have like an L shape, and that holds the battery in place. So there's your battery connector there, and you see the cable coming down to the bottom of your battery and into the bottom of your battery. So you have an L shape, and if I look over here, so the L shape goes underneath these ribbon cables, and it sits quite nicely underneath. The only kind of difficult screw to get in is the one at the top. You can see just there, it's just underneath that ribbon cable, just there. That is quite difficult. You do need to be careful putting that one back in. This screw here. Once it goes in, it's dead easy. And then if you come over the top of the ribbon cable, you can just see, no you can't. If you move the ribbon cable up, you can see that there's another screw hole there. Once you replace that, you will have one more heat shield, and it's a heat shield that holds these two in place, and it's one screw on the left hand side and one screw on the right hand side. In the absence of these being in place, we're not going to put them back. I don't have them in the spares, so I can't put them back. Okay, so it's time to seat the screen back into the phone. Now what you'll notice on the phone is you have small plastic lugs, one on the left hand side, and you can see down there one on the right hand side, and they receive these two small metal loops. So the top end of the phone needs to sit in first. Just to move 1 point back, the reason that I clean out around the edges and any glue, you can see the amount of glue that I took from the body of this phone. If you don't do that, the screen sometimes will not sit in place correctly. So again, really important that you do that. You can replace the glue if you want to. I don't, and I do tell people that their phones are no longer kind of like waterproof, or they're not waterproof anyway, but they have no resistance to water. Okay, so we're gonna sit the screen back into the housing. Okay, once we've got the top edge of the screen in, it really is just a case of you need to use two hands. I tend to push the bottom of the screen into the housing, which makes it that it's gonna fit, and then move down each side simultaneously to just pop the screen in, and you will feel it pop. Don't put too much pressure on it. If you're feeling resistance, stop, find out what the obstruction is, and make sure that you're seating it in properly. Danger is that you're going to crack the screen, and it's going to cost you to replace that. So yeah, just be careful when doing this. You will feel a little bit of resistance. You know, these clips are going into place, but you shouldn't feel that much resistance. And if you are feeling that much resistance, stop, take the screen back out, have a look for any screws that have fallen off the old screen and are sitting down the side. Okay, so once the screen is seated and you're happy with that, then it's time to replace our two pentalobe screws, and that's the long ones just there. When replacing the pentalobe screws, I tend to just apply a little bit of pressure onto the base of the screen, nothing too much, and that is only to ensure that the screws are going to catch the holes that they are designed to go into. I think the reason for the length of these screws is that you can see that the screw itself isn't that long, but they're just kind of like guidance screws. So we're going to pop those back in. Okay, and that's it. The phone is working, the touchscreen's working. I'm happy with that. We weren't given the code to unlock the phone, so I can't check everything. You know, something I do say to everyone, that if there is something wrong, bring it back and I'll resolve that. Okay, I'm not a YouTube kind of person. Thought I'd do a quick video on repairing phones. It's getting a bit boring in lockdown now, so I'm going to try and do a video on something every day. It may be iPhones, it may be something totally different, but I'm going to try and do a video a day, just to relieve the boredom, if nothing else. And if you like the videos, hit like. If you want to leave a comment, please do. Please be nice. Yeah, this isn't kind of like a job or anything like that. I just do this for a bit of fun, and I repair screens for a bit of extra as well. So yeah, hit like, share the video, and please do comment below.